Krishna Caitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Gauranitaya, Jaya Gauranitaya, Jaya Gauranitaya, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Gauranitai ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrindam. Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrindam. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrindam. So we are reading from Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta Adilila, chapter 16, The last verse yesterday was 81, but the verse that we're gonna read the purport from, it's 89. So, shall we all go to 89 and I read the translation only? Easier? So, I'll just gonna read the first 8 or so verses, just a translation. Continuing from the description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu interacting with Keshava Kashmir. The Lord said to the Pandit, "Everyone knows that lotus flowers grow in the water, but water never grows from a lotus. All such contradictions, however, are wonderfully possible in Krishna. The great river Ganges has grown from his lotus feet." So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu addressing some of the details of the poetry that was composed by Keshava Kashmir. So he's getting really deep into those details. The real glory of Mother Ganges is that she has grown from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Such a hypothesis is another ornament called Anuman. Text 84. I have simply discussed the 5 gross faults and 5 literary embellishments of this verse. But if we consider it in fine detail, we will find unlimited faults. Text 85. You have achieved poetic imagination and ingenuity by the grace of your worshipable demigod. But poetry not well reviewed is certainly subject to criticism. Text 86. Poetic skill used with due consideration is very pure, and with metaphors and analogies it is dazzling. Text 87. After hearing the explanation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the champion poet, struck with wonder, his cleverness stunned, could not say anything. He wanted to say something, but no reply could come from his mouth. He then began to consider this puzzle within his mind. So you can put 89 now? Okay, so we can read all together. This one is the one we will read the purport from. Paduya balaka kaila mora buddhi lopam. Paduya balaka kaila mora buddhi lopam. Jani Saraswati more kariyachena lukopam. Jani Saraswati more kariyachena kopam. Paduya balaka kaila mora buddhi lopam. Jani Saraswati more kariyachena kopam. Boris. Paduya baluka kaila mora buddhi lopa. Ladies, Vaishnavis. Anyone else? Pahi Jabalaka Kaila Morabudi Lopam Jani Saraswati More Kariya Chena Kopam. Word by word. Paduya, student. Balaka, a boy. Kaila, maid. Mora, my. Buddhi, intelligence. Lopa, lost. Jani, I can understand. Saraswati, Mother Saraswati. More, with me. Kariya Chena, must have been Kopa, angry. Translation. Please repeat. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. I can therefore understand that Mother Saraswati has become angry with me. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. I can therefore understand that Mother Saraswati has become angry with me. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. The Paramatma gave the Pandit the intelligence to understand that because he was proud of his learning and wanted to defeat even the Supreme Lord, by the will of the Lord and through the agency of Mother Saraswati, he had been defeated. One should not, therefore, be too proud of one's position. Even if one is a greatly learned scholar, if he commits an offense to the lotus feet of the Lord, he will not be able to speak properly, in spite of his learning. In every respect, we are controlled. Our only duty, therefore, it is to surrender always to the lotus feet of the Lord and not be falsely proud. Mother Saraswati created this situation to favor the champion Pandit so that he might surrender unto Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sunyavari Pasyati Adeshatarine Vanchakalpataruvyaschа Kripa Sindhu Vivacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. So this is the pastime of pride, shall we say, learning, humility. Many lessons the Lord is giving here by his interactions with Keshava Kashmir. In previous classes, different devotees describe this pastime, and often we can point out that knowledge is very important, right? Basically, a whole movement, as Prabhupada said, this is an educational movement. ISKCON is an educational institution. Therefore, knowledge is important, right? Everything is all about our books. Srila Prabhupada explains in several places that he created this movement so the Bhagavatam can take place, right? And the Bhagavatam doesn't mean only, of course, the books are Krishna himself, but the Bhagavatam means that glorification of Krishna. That's what this movement is for. So it's easily established that knowledge is important, and everyone should read. And Prabhupada's he says, my only complaint about my followers or students or disciples is or was they don't read enough. They don't read my books. They distribute the books, but they don't read the books. Like that. That's what he said. Okay, so here we have somebody who definitely have studied, not Prabhupada's books, but the Vedas and literature, Vedic literature. And he was a champion, Digvijay. He would conquer, would defeat anybody, everybody, in all directions. Topmost scholar. But there was a problem. And what was that problem? That he was proud. And as Krishna warns us in the Bhagavad Gita, that's the fall down of a Brahmin or someone who is knowledgeable. Huh? There's a sense of I'm better, I know more, I live a happier life, and therefore I fall into this trap of consider myself superior. And that's quite in contrast with what Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, which is a recommendation that he gives in Chaitanya Caritamrta, that we should carry a what do you call, a locket, like that, right? And there's a verse that should be written there. I remember many years back, some devotees produced a locket like that, and the verse was there: Trinarapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnana. That we should be more humble than the straw on the street, and more tolerant than a tree. And we should give all respects to others and do not expect respect for ourselves. And in that way, then we can chant, glorify Krishna constantly, right? And we can make a formulation there that sometimes we see many people coming, many devotees, initiated this, that, taking responsibility. And then after some years, fast forwarding the video, then those devotees are not there, right? Even sometimes some of the old photos you see in Prabhupada's days or from our days, or surely from your days, And if you think a few years back, a number of people were there in the ashram or around or in the community, and then one day they are not there anymore. And we can say simply that there was not enough humility or understanding, etc. Right? I mean, although Bhaktitirtha Maharaj often said that we should think the reason why people left is because of us, because we weren't kind enough, we were not caring enough, we were not expert enough. So he gives a very interesting angle. So back to Srila Prabhupada's purport here. What is the first thing that he says? That in the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's sleeping or meditating. Where does he say that? Where does he say that? Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in several parts, shall we say, but Prabhupada is referring here to very important verse. And generally, I like old school. I'm older now. So I like to have the books and everything, but sometimes it gets complicated. So someone recommended just bring their computer, and then easier here. Who knows this verse? Sarvasya chaham ridisha nivishto. This is chapter 15, text 15. This is the essential verse of that chapter. Chapter 15 is one of the shortest chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. 15 and chapter 12, they only have 20. Can you do that? Oh, great. This is the power of technology. So chapter 15 has only 20 verses. It takes less than 5 minutes if you just read the text. Less than 5 minutes reading the whole chapter. Right? We have taken time with my wife, yeah? All the verses, and then, all of them except chapter 2 with 72 verses, chapter 18 with 78 verses, and chapter 11 with how many verses? Chapter 11? 55. All of them, except those three, takes less than 10 minutes to read. right? And if, I don't know, if you use Facebook, there is a feature that tells you how many minutes per day we spend on Facebook. I don't want to say mine, it's confidential. But we all have that. And what to speak of other apps, WhatsApp, TikTok, Instagram, etc. Huh? YouTube. Hare Krishna. So, if we read these verses from the different chapters, even less than 10 minutes, we can have a strong grasp of what is that Krishna is teaching us. So, in this pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Keshava Kashmir, he is presenting the same truths that Krishna presents in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? The essential truths that he speaks about to Arjuna are explained in these chapters of Chaitanya Caritamrta. So, this is the first point that Prabhupada is bringing up in his purport. Okay, so let's repeat this. These are Krishna's words. Let's do it all together, quicker. Sarvasya chaham ridisha nivishto matas smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedascha sarvar ahameva vedya vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. For those interested in studying Bhakti Shastras, this is one of the verses, one of the 30 verses. Okay? So, all the Bhagavad Gita chapters have one particular verse that presents the essential teaching of that chapter. All right? And sometimes it's the verse that Prabhupada quoted the most, and sometimes he will say, in this verse, the purport of chapter 11 is presented. Chapter 11, for example. He says like that. Right? So it's very important that we get the essence of those chapters, because our memory is very short in this age. We can have a disclaimer, right? In Srimad Bhagavatam, we have that famous verse. Prayanalpa yusahasavya kalosmin yuge janaha manda sumanda matavyo manda bhagya hi upatrutaha. One of the most quoted verses of Srila Prabhupada, which means in this age of Kali, people have short lives, and their memory is very short also, right? And there are many bad qualities, always fighting, always anything someone says, or the way somebody looks at us, immediately we get arced up. Why did he say that? What did she look at me in that way? And then we're always disturbed. That's manda sumanda matahi. So it's good that we learn Srila Prabhupada's books in a simplified way, right? Whatever works. Remember in the good old days we used to have cards, the verses card, the mantra cards, or the little notebooks like that, and then we carry them, and then the brahmacharis, we had to learn verses. I remember in my ashram, if you didn't learn your daily verse, you wouldn't have prasadam. So we were very good at this. I still remember the first verse because they told me, no, if you don't learn your verse, you cannot eat. There I was, sochanam basachastam. So it's important. It's purifying. And it helps us to solidify that understanding. Otherwise, we read these pastimes, and depending on the speaker, he may be very eloquent and dramatic and very knowledgeable and give us all these details. I listen to the classes here. Some devotees know so much, all the facts and figures, and then I'm thinking the very next day, hardly I remember what was the class about, and what were all those figures, all those facts. So it's good that we sharpen, or somehow, even when you do your exams at school, you have, I don't know how you call them here, cheats, yeah, and then you write them in your hand, and all the tricks, right? And you used to have little papers, and you put them here, there, and then when the exam comes, then you Right? I don't know if that's still a thing. Maybe now with other instruments, artifacts. I remember in my days, I was a good student, so I didn't do that. Okay, so this is the verse. Sarvasya chaham ridishani vishto. Very, very important verse. And here in the second line, you see, mata. Mata means from me. Right? You have the translation? Let's read the translation instead of me attempting to. Okay. Okay, let's read it all together. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Okay, so these are Krishna's words. He spoke these same words more than 5,000 years ago. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is referring to. And he says, all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. Paramatma means the Supreme Soul, Super Soul. Yeah? The Paramatma, and this is important because you see Prabhupada's purports are like a fruit, we can say. And the fruit has different layers. Right? For example, you have a banana, right? It's a banana. But in order for you to enjoy the banana, you have to peel the skin, right? Take the skin off. So you can say, yeah, the whole thing it's a banana, but you don't eat the banana, yeah? So sometimes you have to peel some layers like that, and then you can enjoy the core of it, the essence of it. So here in the purport, I know generally in a lecture, that's here amongst devotees or everywhere else, there are studies that it takes between 8 to 12 minutes for people to land, right? Like a helicopter. So our mind is somewhere else, super blissful kirtan, and God knows what we were thinking while the kirtan was going on, and then the class starts. And it takes around 8 to 12 minutes, that's what studies say, for us to land, like the helicopter to land. So I'm going to read this again because I'm sure that the first time I read it, it just went off our heads. Okay? So see if we can pick something up, and you help me here to unpack what Prabhupada is explaining to us. So this is the first point. Get the microphone ready because we can get people to... In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. The Paramatma gave the Pandit the intelligence to understand that because he was proud of his learning and wanted to defeat even the Supreme Lord, by the will of the Lord and through the agency of Mother Saraswati, he had been defeated. Okay? That's another point that Prabhupada makes. Therefore, what is this? One should not, therefore, be too proud of one's position. So that's another instruction that Prabhupada is given. Even if one is a greatly learned scholar, if he commits an offense to the lotus feet of the Lord, he will not be able to speak properly in spite of his learning. In every respect, we are controlled. Our only duty, therefore, is to surrender always to the lotus feet of the Lord and not be falsely proud. Mother Saraswati created this situation to favor the champion, Pandit, and he might, so that he might surrender unto Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what points come up in this purport?
Liked where it said there that she created this situation to favor the Pandit, that it was for his benefit to be defeated by Lord Chaitanya.
Right.
Like at the time, he was feeling some frustration, some anxiety, but looking a bit wider, it's for his benefit. So
So, making it real, my humble request is, think of a situation where Krishna humbled you, right? And you realize, oh, what a fool. What a fool I was, or I am. Right? Remember the first time you pay obeisances. Remember the first time you pay obeisances? Maybe you little ones, because you were born in the movement, you don't remember. But remember the first time you put your head on the ground? Krishna tells Uddhava in 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, I like my devotees and I like their humility because they pay obeisance to me on the ground, even if the ground is dirty. And I can guarantee if you pass your hand, always going to find some debris, some dirt, is it? But still, you go there and you just, put yourself, all your body on the ground in front of Krishna. And he tells Uddhava, like, intimately, I like that. They're so humble. It's amazing. They're really, really humble. Yeah? Okay, so this is the point, that we need to be humble, and we need to understand that whatever happens in our life, it's Krishna's mercy, right? But here there is something quite subtle. He says there are, we may say, two levels. We don't want to get too deep into it, but there are two levels of intelligence, right? If you remember things easily, if you have good control of poetry and memory, and you can, just like this Pandit, how many verses he composed? 100 verses. 100 verses. And Lord Caitanya remembered them all. Not only remembered them, but immediately, on the fly, he could pick up mistakes. Okay? So he was very intelligent. So, but here, two levels of intelligence are analyzed by Prabhupada. The first level is that, you're clever. You know so much. You can argue, debate, defeat, present different angles of a point. You can create poetry. You can eloquently glorify something, someone, in this way, that way. So you're very intelligent. But a different level of intelligence is to understand that intelligence doesn't come from you. That's the subtle point that Prabhupada is making in this purport. He says, first of all, he established in the purport that all intelligence comes from Krishna, specifically Paramatma. I mean, it's Krishna through the agency of Paramatma. That intelligence, Prabhupada explains, it's the same intelligence that is given to the animals, right? To do things. They know what to eat. They don't have to read some book, or they don't have to attend a seminar, right? The birds, they know where it is south, where it is north. They know, where to go, what not to do, etc. They know. It's Paramatma. Some people call it intuition, but it's the intelligence. Even the trees, Prabhupada says, they know where the sun is, and they should head. All plants generally head towards the sun. So intelligence comes from Paramatma, okay? So that's established. Prabhupada indirectly quotes this verse, 15:15, Bhagavad Gita. But this is the kernel of the whole thing. The Paramatma gave the Pandit the intelligence to understand that because he was proud of his learning and wanted to defeat even the Supreme Lord, by the will of the Lord and through the agency of Mother Saraswati, he had been defeated. So you may be very knowledgeable, very intelligent, very capable, clever, skilled, talented, but there's a higher level of intelligence that allows us to understand that, one, everything, skills, talent, powered intelligence, comes from Krishna. And secondly, when we forget that, it takes some intelligence to realize, right? What's that saying? To err is human and to divine, yeah, right? So we may commit mistakes, and we have to understand, oh, I have committed a mistake, right? That's a level of your cognitive capacity. Yeah, this is the mistake. Like when there is a plane crash, plane crash. Then what do? Sometimes they put the whole plane together, bit by bit. Why? Because they are obsessed, they are OCD. Why? Because they want to find out what was the problem, what was the fault. So it won't be committed again. It won't be, and then hundreds of people's life will be spared. So the idea here in this pastime is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is favoring Keshava Kashmir in making him understand that this is not the right thing to do. Okay. As usual, there's not much time, so we have to sort of start wrapping it up. This message that everything comes from Krishna is also something that Krishna says in one of the Chaturslokis, the first verse of the Chaturslokis in chapter 10, Opulences of the Absolute, text number 8, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Mata Sarvam Pravartate, which is the same thing. He's repeating himself. Yeah, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Mata Sarvam Pravartate. It's just double affirmation of the same. He says, everything comes from me. All right? Everything comes from me. Okay, that's the lesson that Prabhupada is giving us in the first part of this purport. Everything comes from Krishna. Now, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are a few instances where the devotees realize that without Krishna, their capacity to do things, right? You may be very expert at something, but sometimes you commit mistake, right? You may be a very good whatever, but you commit a mistake. And in the Bhagavatam, as I said, there are instances where the devotees realize that because of Krishna's presence, I was able to do that. And one of my favorite pastimes of the Bhagavatam, I'm a fan of Arjuna, comes in the first canto, in the 15th chapter, where the Pandavas, after Krishna leaves, they decide to retire, right? And Yudhishthira Maharaj sends his brother Arjuna, the recipient of the Bhagavad Gita, to find what's going on with the rest of the family, the dynasty, and to visit his Lord, their Lord, Krishna. Long story short, Krishna has departed. And Arjuna was so dejected, so frustrated, depressed practically, that he couldn't even think straight. Couldn't think straight, and he couldn't fight properly. And Arjuna was considered the best warrior of the whole world. And what happens when Arjuna was bringing some queens of Krishna, some, what do you call those, dacoits, gundas, simple road robbers, right? They defeated him. These people are not even warriors. They're just thieves, But they defeated him, right? So he is very much frustrated, embarrassed, and finally he arrives at Yudhishthira's palace. And then Yudhishthira is asking him a different question. It's so endearing, this narration of Arjuna, because he's remembering. He says, my dear friend, my Lord, Madhusudana, he was telling me all these wonderful things. We will rest. And I foolishly engaged him as my chariot driver. So he's remembering very emotionally how Krishna has given him so much mercy. But there's a beautiful verse here that when he finally acknowledges that all his power was because of Krishna. And he says this, I have the very same Gandiva bow. I have the very same Gandiva bow. The same arrows. The same chariot drawn by the same horses. And I use them as the same Arjuna, to whom all the kings offer their due respects. Remember, this is after Kurukshetra. So he had defeated everyone. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them, at a moment's notice, have become null and void. It is exactly like offering clarified butter on ashes, accumulating money with a magic wand, or sowing seeds on a barren land. And this line of Prabhupada's purport, it's amazing. And Prabhupada says, as we have discussed more than once, one should not be puffed up by borrowed plumes. I don't know if he took it from elsewhere. Sometimes Prabhupada, he read English literature. So I don't know. But he says, one should not be puffed up by borrowed plumes. There might be some story like that. The story that it comes to mind is that there was a jackal. I don't remember exactly the story. I think it was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who tells the story in Bengali. And there was a jackal, and the jackal falls into a pond where, in India they dye the clothes. Sometimes you see, right, across the river in Swarupganj, and the ladies are there dyeing the clothes with different colors, and then they hang it like that. So they have these little ponds, yeah, and then they put the dye there, and then they put the cloth there like that. So one jackal falls into one of those, and it becomes a blue jackal, right? So anyway, he's claiming to be Bhagavan because he's blue and the whole thing like that. So there are different instances like that. Sometimes stories of that sort that we may think that we are something that we are not, but we forgot what it's our origin. In the same way, another pastime that I like a lot, which coincidentally is the last chapter that Srila Prabhupada commented on in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto. Is it chapter 13? Chapter 13, Brahma's prayers, right? Where he acknowledges that he has been a fool, and he has doubted the supremacy of the Lord, and then he tried to trick Krishna, and then he stole the cows and the calves and the cowherd boys, because he was bewildered. How is this little young boy the same the same thing that Keshava Kashmir says? He says, Padu yabalaka hoila more budi lopa, that this little boy has confused my intelligence. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. Right? So sometimes we may see, right? Is this little boy Krishna? Huh? Confirm. Is this little one that it's playing around with his friends and calves and crying when Mother Yasoda puts him down? Is he the supreme person? Really? Right? Like that. Sometimes he's defeated, right? In Braj, when he's wrestling, we know the story, it's one of my favorite, right? Sometimes the other cowboys, they defeat him, right? And he loves that, right? And Mother Yasoda catches him, and he loves that, right? And punishes him, right? And he likes that. Why? Because he's Bhaktavatsala, because he's someone that likes the love of his devotees. Right? That's Krishna. But in the case of the devotees, they always like to understand their humility. And sometimes Prabhupada says, thinking where? Fourth canto, I think. He says, when a devotee commits mistakes, and this is in reference to Lord Brahma, because when Lord Brahma committed that mistake, the Brahma Mohana Lila, he was confused. He washed Krishna's feet with his tears. He made an abhishek. You know when we have abhishek, right? And then they bring all the ingredients, water, rose water, this, that, milk, yogurt, honey, etc. And then we wash the deity, bathe the deity like that. So Lord Brahma washed Lord Krishna with his tears. That's the end of Prabhupada's translation of the 10th canto, 13th chapter of the 10th canto. Okay, so a couple of the pastimes there. Arjuna, Lord Brahma, committing mistakes. So the message here is that for whatever reasons and through whoever's agency, in this case was Mother Saraswati, because Mother Saraswati was the one who blessed Keshava Kashmir to be so eloquent and to remember everything and anything. He could defeat anyone. But by her own grace, she withdrew her Shakti, her energy from her beloved devotee, Keshava Kashmir, and he became numb. He couldn't say anything, right? And therefore, because his embarrassment, because of his mistake, then at one point he became a very exalted devotee. All right, so we're going to stop here. If there's any points or any questions or anything that in regards of what we just presented. This is a long pastime, has hundreds of verses, I think, in total. 111 or whatever chapter. And many devotees have spoken about this, 111 verses, this chapter. And many devotees have spoken about this pastime. So what is the message? What is the takeaway from this? That doesn't matter what our position is, doesn't matter what our skills are, our talents, our strength. Everything comes from Krishna. And when we forget that, we're in trouble, right? And so we don't have to wait to get in trouble in order for us to realize that. And therefore, it's good that we remember this on regular basis. Everything comes from Krishna. And as Prabhupada explains in one of those purports in the 10th canto, the 13th chapter, we have just borrowed these shaktis, these strengths that we have. Krishna has given us, right? And they are meant to fulfill a purpose. Whatever we're able to do, whatever capacity we have, is for the pleasure of Him. And when we occupy it or dovetail, it's a word Prabhupada used to use a lot, dovetail that, connect those with Krishna, then we feel very satisfied. Why? Because Krishna is satisfied. But when we try to use it for our own enjoyment or for someone else's enjoyment, then we feel frustrated, embarrassed, and finally it's a loss of the capacity of human life. All right. Thank you so much. Gantaraj, Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Sri Gaurnitai ki Gaur Premanandi. Sarvasya chaham ridishani visto asmitim jnanam apam. grabando. ¿Quién?